just after he died, because he was a member of the Normandy Veterans Association, and I thought it'd be a good idea to actually give this Stars and Stripes back to its original owners. So I contacted the secretary of the Normandy Veterans Association, which he was a member of, and he said, "Oh, great." He said, "Right, we'll see if we can, what we can come up with." And it wasn't long after that where he said, the beginning of September, he said, we've got some veterans of the 29th Division, which is the American forces. They were coming over for a visit, and because on the eve of D-Day, they were, Helford River was, blimey, the Germans would have had a field day if they could have spotted all that lot there. And there was all these crafts, big and small, tied at anchor in Helford River, and that's where they all embarked from. 6,500 troops left there, and some of these veterans that came over, this was the first time back since that particular day. So I was asked to come along because they were having a commemoration. It was a 60th commemoration of the outbreak of war, and so they tied that visit in with that. And of course, these American veterans, they didn't know nothing about this flag, and so I turned up on the day just thinking, well, just there we are, thank you very much, and all that business. But when I arrived there, and I saw people everywhere there was, and next thing now I heard this booming voice, "Is there a Philip Harvey in the area?" And I said, "Yes, that's me." "Ah, you come along with me, young man." He said, "You're a very important person today." I thought, what? Got to be joking. "Yes," he said, "you're playing the main part today." I thought, yeah, right. And just to be in the midst of all these veterans, I've never felt so humbled in all my life. It was just certainly something that I'll remember always, you know. And anyhow, they had a service down on the beach, and then there was a bit of a meet up, and then they all made their way back up through the gardens, back up to this big marquee, where they were all going to be served up with a pint and a pasty. And I was one of the last ones again to get to walk back up, and well, you'll see it on the DVD there. I'm one of the last ones, and I just caught the start of the chairman of the Normandy Veterans said, "We're not only here to commemorate the outbreak of war, but we're also here to pay homage to a former member of ours who sadly passed away a couple of months ago." I thought, God, here we go. They said, Lieutenant Harvey, they said he, during the war, he was assigned to the American forces at Omaha, and after the breakthrough, he managed to find a Stars and Stripes flag, and of course, as soon as that was mentioned, all these American veterans, they all looked across thinking, hello, what's this? And they said Lieutenant Harvey kept this with him all his life, and then it was a family's wishes that it be handed back to its rightful owners. And he said, so without further ado, I'd like to ask him to come forward and say a few words. And I thought, oh my Christ. And no speech prepared or nothing. And I just went and I thought, oh God. And then all of a sudden, I just clicked into gear, and that was it, literally. And when I finally finished speaking, which wasn't that long, but there's obviously applause sort of thing, and I passed it over to this young lieutenant, naval rating. She then passed it on to there was what they call a colour party. They were Marines, American, but they had a tradition where they would pass this flag along, pass it along, and it was just so moving. It was unbelievable. Until when it got to the very end, and then they passed it on to this lieutenant who was stationed at Newquay, and he said a few words, and then he passed it on to these veterans, and oh God, you ought to see them. They were all in tears. They were, literally. And when it got to the last one, who was the spokesperson, he clutched it to his chest. And then he came forward and stood beside me, and then he said his bit. And then when he turned around and faced me, he said, "Young man," he said, "you don't realise what you've done." Oh God, here we go. And there was much I could do to keep it in, So, God, he shook my hand off, literally. And then they then presented me with a brand new Union Jack. And it's huge. I've got it at home. I have fetched it out on various occasions, but it's massive, this Union Jack is. And so, yeah, I was pretty proud of, of what happened that day. So I go up to the cemetery quite often now because as far as I was concerned, he was, he was the man, literally. So yeah, that's pretty much all I can tell you now. If I don't stop there, I'll never stop.
Thank you, Phil. That's very touching.
Yeah. It was, as I say, it was a very, very moving ceremony. I never realised. If I'd have known it was going to be like that, I think I would have probably been a bag of nerves. So it was dropped on me at the last minute, and I just didn't realise it was. And then when just after all the awards were handed out and this and that, and everybody was mingling around, and I was driving that day as well. That was the best of it, and all these Americans were coming up to me, and, "Gee, fella, you're going to have a beer?" And if I would have accepted every single offer, I would have been just paralytic, literally. And there they were now, they'd obviously never eaten a pasty before, but they coped pretty well. And they said, "Yeah, this meat pie is really good." And they were drinking pints as well. And I then wandered up, and because I gave the secretary of the Normandy Veterans, I gave him a load of photographs, and he displayed, they had them all displayed on these boards. And these two American veterans were standing up there, their hands behind their backs, and they were there looking at them, and I overheard one of them say, "Gee, Elmer, he must have been some kind of fella." Yeah, I thought, yeah, all right. And I walked away. I couldn't hear anymore. It was quite moving, it really was. I did say on the speech that whether Father would have been in agreement to hand in the flag back if he was still alive, but he hasn't got any say in the matter now. Several times I've had a slap across the back of the head from literally like a very spiritual presence, I should say. I'm sure it's him, thinking, "How dare you give that back?" But yeah, he was a true Newlyn man, just like his father before him. And if I remember, oh God, must be in the mid-70s now. There was a knock on the door, and there was a friend of mine who was going to join the police force, and he said, "Oh, do you think your dad will just give me an insight as to what the police force is like?" So I said to Dad about it. He said, "Yeah, bring him in." He said. So he said, "Right, first question," he said, "have you joined?" And He said, well, yes. He said, I've been accepted. Oh, right. He said, because if you hadn't have joined, he said, I would have strongly advised you not to join. He said, because I can tell you now that in the police force, you'll never, never write. No matter what, you will do things which you should take credit for, but the credit will go to your superiors. And you never answer back. You got to toe the line at all times. He said, if I had my time to go over again, I would never have joined the police force. And he said, oh, all right, okay. But he did join the police force, this fella. Yeah, I certainly wouldn't have joined the police force, I can tell you now. I was afraid of the dark.